Tonight, that's about as adventurous a picture as you're going to see on my talk. Tonight's very much about a journey and not a destination. It's unusual for me to do this kind of talk. I've done a few for a charity, one you see there in that picture. So it's unusual for me to not hook the whole talk around the charity, and it's taken a lot of reflection on and thought about the period I'm going to talk to you about. So to provide some context, there is our team Barty. So to give you a bit of context, on the right there is my lovely wife Helen, who's an amazing teacher and keeps me grounded and provides me with much love and support, and is really the cohesion behind our family unit. In the middle there, on the right, is Hannah, our youngest, and then it's Ella, our football mad daughters. And then if you haven't worked it out by now, that's me on the left. I'm an engineer, a chartered civil engineer. I work for local government, but since all this, I've added a few more strings to my bow. And like everyone else, we're doing homeschooling, donning a white helmet for UN peacekeeping, and growing our hair as ridiculously long. And I think the last time it was this long was about 1992. So my 10 minutes, I'm going to talk to you about a specific 2-year period, and that's 2009 to 2011, and the kind of impact and the start of my journey. So back in 2009, which is 11 years ago, probably in the spring, I was playing cricket, much to my wife's disgust, and I injured my shoulder. And that was the start of continual pain in my right shoulder. I was bowling, and there was a traumatic pain. So I didn't play that game. I was sat in the slips and really didn't do very much. And then I went to the doctors, and so began a bit of a story in a relationship with my GP. We had steroids, several shots of steroids. He convinced me it was ligament damage. I then went on to have ultrasounds at the hospital. And an MRI, which is one of the most uncomfortable things, being sat in a tube for a couple of hours. And then this journey continued. So I had a biopsy on my shoulder eventually, and then, as the title said, 10 years, 171 days, and actually I didn't know what time I was going to talk, but it's probably 10 hours ago. I was sat with my wife in a consultant's office in Oxford Nuffield Orthopaedic Hospital. And in there was my Macmillan support nurse. And as you may well guess where this is going, but we were told in no uncertain terms that the future was quite bleak. And I was diagnosed with primary bone cancer and a chondrosarcoma, which is the large shaded area you can see in my upper right arm there. And there was a risk that this would spread to the rest of my body, particularly with my lungs, and the future, if they didn't act now, would be quite bleak. And there was still, black clouds hanging over us. I remember this moment very vividly, as anyone who's had this kind of news does. My whole life kind of shrunk into this one specific moment, a kind of point of singularity, if you like. And a black hole opened up in front of me, and I kind of put my head in my hands, and a few expletives came out. And then I was brought back into reality. And I think my consultant at that point tried to cheer me up by saying, don't worry, we've had people with this, and we've had surgery, and they've gone on to play golf quite regularly. I'm not sure that had the desired effect that I was after, really. But we left that consultant's room, and I met this lovely woman. This is my Macmillan support nurse, Helen. We're still good friends, and she really held our hand through the whole process, and any part of this story would be incomplete without me mentioning her. So a week later, I was in for surgery. I had a large lump of steel put in my shoulder, lots of muscles lost, lots of ligaments lost. I was immobilized and put on quite a bit of morphine, and I was in hospital for about a week. And then I was sent home on a lot of pain meds, and I couldn't really do a lot, to be honest. I was pretty immobilized. And then we got home. I was sat on the sofa, and then Helen told me we were about to have another baby. So that was quite a bizarre conversation. Didn't really know what my future held. And to find that news was strange, to say the least. Christmas came and went, and then I spiraled into some mental health issues. I was scared, I was anxious, I was angry, and so I started a process of counselling. And that was my process for a while. I was in physio, I had hydrotherapy, I had issues with my mental health, and regular checkups at the hospital. But bit by bit, I put myself together with the love and support of those around me. So then it was after that, I was off work for 6 months. It was time to try and move on and get on to the next phase, really. So the first bit was to get fit. I was cricket fit before, and that's questionable whether that's fit at all. And I was enforced into being a couch potato. So I started walking and generally getting out of the house once I was given the all clear to actually move. And then I started running. I joined a local running club. I did the Great South Run, Great North Run, both for Macmillan, and generally started to fundraise. And then the biggest challenge would come. At the time, I'd set myself, as a result of one of the hospital visits from a very good friend of mine, Big Al. I can't remember this conversation. I think I was pretty much of it on morphine, but we agreed apparently to climb Kilimanjaro. So the training began in earnest, and then so in 2011, we left for Kili. I'm not going to go into a great deal of detail about the journey itself, because about the trip itself, this is about the journey, as I said, not the destination. However, it was a truly awesome experience, and back then, I look back 10 years ago, that was really out of my comfort zone. I'd done some walking and some trekking in the lakes with family, but this was off the charts, really. We'd done a lot of fundraising. But that I won't go into but there are a number of points that I just want to make about Kili. It rained a lot. Everyone else's Kili journey seems to be lovely with beautiful sunshine and some great views. We had rain 70% of the time, and nothing seemed to dry out. It was my 40th birthday on the mountain, which was amazing to have all the local crew come in our tent, give me a lovely chocolate cake, and sing happy birthday, or I think it was happy birthday in Swahili, and filing in and out of the tent. That was just a lovely moment that I'll never forget. Summit night was tough, really tough, as Nala has just explained. And up to then, that's probably the hardest thing I've ever had to do. But it probably does pale into insignificance when the biggest lesson I learned on that hill was not to share a tent with someone called Big Al, who is 6'8", rolls all over the place, and snores like a rhino. As a group for Macmillan, we raised about 120k, of which I raised about 10k of that. So, as I said, this is about the journey and not the destination. My reflection on this whole period, this 2-year period, really, it had quite an emotional impact on me, and I've thought about it quite a bit over the last week or so as I've pulled this talk together. I came off Kili and I phoned home and told my wife that I'd done it. Then I phoned my mum, and that had a massive impact on me, and it still does. As I say this, I was still a little boy seeking approval, and I recognise that as a parent now, and as I've got kids, you don't really stop worrying about your children. And both my mum and I were in tears on the phone. My mum died a few years ago now, and so that approval that I sought then, I really seek from my girls. I try and inspire them to be the best version of themselves that they can be, and I try and introduce them to really inspiring women to help them on their life's journey. So I came back from Kili with loads of excess kit, and I pulled together some stuff for porters. And as anyone in the outdoor world knows, there's never you don't really need an excuse to buy more kit. So I filled 2 rucksacks and I took them to Discover Adventures offices for them to send them over for the porters. And it was Christmas. There was no one around. And I met Johnny, the manager, the owner of Discover Adventure. And he quite glibly said, "How was Kili?" And I said, "It was great. It was very wet, but it was really challenging." And he said, "It'll change your life." I didn't really think about it then, but I have done since. Kili was really a gateway. In the same way in addiction that some drugs are gateway drugs, Kili seems to have been a bit of my gateway drug for a life of more adventure. So I look back at this part of my life and I remember the pain, both emotionally and physically, but I also remember the support and the love that I felt, and how, as a result of this dark period of my life, I started out on a totally different path. I'd just like to finish with this bit. I watched this last week. It was an amazing little clip, Ace and the Desert Dog. And there was one little word in there, one little phrase in there that has just stuck with me since. You can only see so much from your car. And physically and metaphorically, I think it was time then for me to get out of the car and be part of my life.
Woo! That was amazing.